IIM Raipur finally you decided on, right? Talk about those 500 days of preparation between 16 and 17.
Right.
When you aren't even sure of the results, and what keeps you going? What keeps you going?
The first thing is academics. I know most people are only focused on placements, and even I was when I was younger, like I'll openly admit it now. For placements, honestly, every IIM that is 10 years or older, they're not going to have a problem with placements because
Okay.
you can get placed in one of two ways. I joined a product based startup in Bangalore at the time. There was this other company that I landed up in, which had a product that essentially takes the spirit of consulting and boils it down to a product.
Okay.
Right. And again, I had a great stint there for almost a year. But during that entire process, I knew that consulting cannot be distilled down to a product.
Right.
And so a lot of times when I tell people this, they ask me, but like, could you not have done this without B school? I'm like, absolutely not. Because
welcome to the Wise Part Company and another episode of Talkfest. And today we have a very soft-spoken boy, but what a competitor, SHREY with us. He did his MBA from IIM Raipur, and in this particular episode, he talks about his journey. There were no financial struggles, but then there are struggles that we are not aware of. So, listen to the boy. It's wonderful. Hi.
Hello, sir. Long time.
Long
7
time.
years now, I think, almost.
Long time. How many years?
I think 7 years since the first time I walked into your classroom. And I think about 5.5 years since I last saw you while preparing for interviews.
Okay. Starting from right from the start. Your school. Which school was it? Which school was it?
So I went to study hall.
Okay. All right. Again, Gomti Nagar, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Gomti Nagar.
There's just one branch they have in entire city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've come up with a new college now. That is at least what I remember last.
Okay.
But yeah. I think I haven't also visited the school in almost 3 years now. I remember this one time we were all feeling very nostalgic. Yeah. And we just decided to go and visit the school. And it felt so good being back there after such a long time because of all the academic institutions I've been to in the last 25 years. Study hall remains one of my favorites. So it was really a very, very nice experience.
In fact, I make it a point to visit my school at least once a year. Every single after 2010, every single year I made it a point, barring those obviously the COVID days. But in 19
makes sense.
But in 19 also I visited twice before they shut it down and the lockdown came. So I think going back to school is in a very strange way very energizing.
Yeah. I think you appreciate it more as you get older because, I mean, see, when we're in school, right, at that age, when you're 15, 16, 17, the only thing that's on your mind is, I want to get out of this place, I want to get out of this city, be independent, live my own life. But when you get older, you get out of the city, you become independent, do you truly realize how special and how enjoyable that time in life was, right? You did not have to worry about doing laundry on the weekends. You did not have to worry about your Wi-Fi not working in the middle of the call. You did not have to worry about tomato prices just going through the roof. These were things that you just took for granted that your parents are going to take care of you. And, you just have to, here's a difficult subject. You just have to get 33 out of 100 pass and like you can chill and you can have fun. So I think when you get older, that added perspective that life offers, it just makes going back to school that much more cherishable as an experience. This is what I've always felt.
Exactly. So coming to the academic part of schooling, were you always, I mean, kind of the kid who was interested in studying, or it was like, yaar, ye kaam bhi hai jo kar lenge, but itna man to nahi lagta hai?
So I'll be very honest. I am an academically oriented person, but I am not traditionally someone who was good at studies or interested in studies for that matter. Um, so I'm carefully choosing my words because I know that when this goes up, my parents are also going to see this, so I don't want them to get any ideas. But the thing is that if I find something that is very interesting to me, that
Mhm.
hooks me,
Mhm.
I will completely dive right into it.
Okay.
But if I find something to be boring, or if I cannot find the why behind that particular subject,
Mhm.
I will not touch it for as long as I can get away with it. So, one example of that is one of my favorite subjects from school, economics, right?
Okay. Okay.
That I believe in the 12 years of primary schooling is the only subject that has ever actually captured my interest.
Mhm.
Because again, it's one of those subjects that's very logical, very rational, where
Mhm.
there is a cause and effect to everything, and it
Mhm.
makes sense in the real world.
Mhm.
And again, we can also apply this concept to business studies by example, because it's essentially the same thing on a different level for a particular business unit.
Mhm.
So those two subjects I was really into, and I would
Mhm.
study, I would learn the diagrams and everything. I would, those were subjects I would actually try to get the most marks in wherever possible.
Mhm.
And funnily enough, even though my class 12th results were not up to the standards I would have expected or set for myself,
Mhm.
I did manage to get the highest marks in my school in both business studies and economics,
Okay.
right? But then there were things like accounts, which I knew I did not want to become a CA. I knew it was just a means to an end, that I
Mhm.
just have to know how to analyze cash flow statements, and I just have
Mhm.
to know how to, get by with ratios. So that's what I did, right? It was just perfunctory from my end. So again, accounts, not great marks. Not terrible, but not great. And that's just how I always approach studies. Like, of course, now that I'm older, I understand that,
Mhm.
we cannot always pick and choose the things that we want. So now, even when something is boring, I try to generate some sort of interest in it that I can at least get through it comfortably. But no, to answer the question and coming back to it, I was not traditionally what you would call a good student or someone who was very interested in the whole concept of study.
Mhm. Uh, why commerce in class 11th? Because usually for students it's math and biology. Why commerce?
Uh-huh. Again, so at the risk of offending my parents when they finally see this, I just did not care for science.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it never interested, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, if you're not interested in science until class 10th, you can get by with it. Like, yeah, I mean,
Huh.
sure, it's not that hard to, get by.
Right.
But then 11th is a whole different ball game, right? Like
Mhm.
science completely changes
Mhm.
dimensions.
Mhm.
So I mean, if anybody would have looked at my marks in class 10, they would probably not have recommended science in the first place. But all of us in, call it hubris, call it overconfidence in ourselves, we thought, what, let's just do it. We can probably get by.
Mhm.
We could not get by.
Mhm.
So after 2 months of it, we just decided that, what, this is not the best for us.
Okay, you did
Let's
opt
just
for
choose something
science.
else.
You did opt for
Yeah,
science
I
in
did it
11th.
for 2 months.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
did it for
Acha.
2 months and then changed.
Uh-huh.
So my dad was very supportive of that decision,
Mhm.
and he thought that, okay, let's just take some time and think about what you're actually interested in, right?
Mhm.
And so again, like I said, it's for me, it was always about finding subjects which made sense. So
Mhm.
I spent some time looking at the entire curriculum for arts and commerce,
Mhm.
and I discovered that business studies and economics, those things that just speak to you, that you really want to know more about.
Yes. Yes.
Those two were those subjects for me that really pushed my decision in that direction. And of course, it also helped that ever since I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of news. So, I mean, it's very difficult to escape politics and economics in everyday news, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I think there was some degree of familiarity with the terms and concepts because
Mhm.
I've always read and watched the news since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And then it was just the fact that, I saw those books, I saw everything, the curriculum made sense, and then I just went for it.
Okay. But still, being a commerce student, the target was never becoming a chartered accountant. Now
No, it was
that
not.
now that again is slightly difficult to explain or understand.
I know, I know. This is something that even I've thought about a lot now that I'm older and I think about my journey.
Mhm.
I was not against the idea. I was
Mhm.
always open to it, right? But because we had sort of rushed into choosing science in class 11th, and
Mhm.
it had not turned out great, we just thought that let's give it a couple of weeks, let's give it a couple of months, and
Mhm.
just figure out where our interests naturally lie.
Mhm.
Because the sole decision to pursue commerce had been driven by the interest in economics and business studies, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So we gave it till half yearly exams,
Mhm.
and it became very clear that accounts is not something that really lights that fire for me.
Okay.
But economics, business studies,
Mhm.
these subjects, they actually do.
Mhm.
So it became very clear early on that I would not be pursuing chartered accounting as my career path.
Mhm.
And I don't find myself wondering what could have been had I chosen that path.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because what I did choose for myself eventually, I ended up getting by fairly comfortably on that.
Mhm.
So yeah, no regrets on that, but that was pretty much the rationale behind that decision at the time.
Okay. And which college or university was it after class 12th?
It was Lucknow University, National PG College.
National PG. Okay. National PG is reasonably known for its commerce. I think so.
Yeah, so that was one of the decisions that we had to make after class 12th as well, right? Like I already
Mhm.
mentioned, the marks, I mean, they weren't exactly as much as I would have liked them to be.
Mhm.
So the pool that we had of colleges to choose from
Mhm.
was somewhat smaller. Now,
Mhm.
initially, what I had thought was that I could maybe, class 12, everybody just wants to go to DU or go to
Mhm.
Mumbai
Mhm. Mhm.
and just go to one of the top colleges, live their
Mhm.
life, do the 3 years of whatever, work for maybe 1 or 2 years, then give gap.
Mhm.
So that had been the initial plan.
Mhm.
But then we had one of these talks in our school where they had, told us how we could actually go into CAT right after undergrad itself.
Okay.
And just go for CAT and go and go
If
to
MAT, I
MBA.
think if MAT was being introduced or it had been introduced.
Yeah, that it had been introduced at the
It had
time.
been. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just thought that that was also an option. So
Mhm.
again, the one thing that we learned from the whole debacle in class 11 was we should always keep the options open, right?
Mhm.
So the initial plan had been that okay, let's just hold off on maybe because look, BU was not on the table. So the
Mhm.
most logical thing was to just go with national PG at the moment.
Mhm.
Because look, it was a competitive entrance. I had cleared it already, so I thought that might as well just take this up.
Mhm.
Let's give it 6 months.
Mhm.
If it doesn't feel right, we can always give the ICMAT, like you said.
Mhm.
And even if it does, then that doesn't matter. 3 years later, we can just give CAT and go and do whatever we want to do. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I gave it 6 months,
Mhm.
and it just did not feel like a natural fit, quite honestly.
Okay.
Because again, it's like I mentioned, I am someone for whom education has to be very experiential.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
has to be very hands-on, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But I mean, this is not a criticism of my college in
It's
any
just
way. But
it's just
yeah,
personality.
it's
Yeah.
just the way the
Mhm.
pedagogy
Mhm.
is structured and the
Mhm.
person that I am. It
Mhm.
was just not compatible. So I thought that let's give it man. I studied really hard for it, and it was in 2016. That was the one year they announced that they now have it mandatory to have maths after 12th in order to go for it, and I did not. So I was like, okay, cool. So that was a waste of time, right? And I mean, to make matters worse, even when they did repeal the decision,
Mhm.
the and the time and date of the entrance was on the same exact time and date as my final exam of semester two.
Okay.
So yeah, and I was just like I mean, see, I'm not averse to taking big risks, right?
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
I know for a fact that I can give this exam in college and like smoothly sail into year two.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I don't give this and I go for that IPM exam. And what if it doesn't end up happening, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that was a difficult decision. But
Mhm.
I just chose to go ahead and complete my
Mhm.
college itself.
Okay.
And I don't, again, that's not a decision I regret because that was the summer when, just to get my mind off the whole IPM thing, right?
Mhm.
I started freelancing for a
Okay.
lot of small businesses in the US in the content writing and social media marketing space.
Okay.
So in some unique way, I feel like it was destined to happen because during that process, right, I
Mhm.
got to learn a lot about how small businesses operate. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
this particular firm that I was working for, right,
Mhm.
they used to sell Halloween costumes,
Okay.
and it seems like a very I'm thinking of the right word for this, but it's not the kind of business you often think about when you think of a small business, right?
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
was a small and pop
I mean,
operation based out of Florida.
it's a single day probably. I mean, that they
Yeah,
celebrate. Yeah.
exactly.
Huh.
My whole idea behind it was that, okay, you know what, maybe like they have some costumes in a warehouse that they
Mhm.
sell through Amazon.
Mhm.
But it was a proper thing where, they had suppliers, they had a proper sourcing channel, they had a
Mhm.
front office and e-commerce channel
Mhm.
set up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they used to track all these metrics that I did not even know about at the time. Because again, these are not things that you learn in college, right?
Mhm.
So I learned a lot about digital marketing and marketing analytics while doing that, even though that was not exactly a part of my job description. So that was one of the benefits of being a part of a 5-6 member team.
Mhm.
And that, and I was doing remote work before remote work became a thing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that was a very interesting experience. And then in 2017, these guys decided to expand their business into ceremonial supplies as well.
Okay.
So again, so there I got to learn about new product introductions,
Mhm.
go-to-market strategies, again on a very micro level,
Mhm.
but it set the foundation for a lot of business-related things that
Mhm.
I would later in life go on to draw from upon my experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that was again at the time it seemed really shitty that this had to happen,
Mhm.
but looking back on it now, I think that that was a very important thing to have happened so that it could push me forward in the journey that I was on at the time.
Mhm. Shrey, one thing that I experienced was when I came out of my school and went to LU, and that was a huge culture shock because
Yes.
we were used to staying in a very protected environment, and we were
Mhm.
a kind of everybody behaved in a certain way, which could be termed as slightly sophisticated, um, soft, polite fellows around, and suddenly you go to a place and you see people around कि यार इनसे तो बात करना मुश्किल हो रहा है. And I somehow feel you must have gone through that coming from study hall and going to national
Yes.
PG.
Yeah. So, and to be very honest with you, the first week or two was not easy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because you're just used to being in a certain environment, being around certain people, and
Yeah.
it also did not help that I had a certain idea for what I wanted my future to be, and this was the polar opposite of it, right?
Exactly. Uh,
Yeah. So I was acting out. I was not happy with it, right? Like I was just straight up not happy, and I realize it now, but it was really limiting me in terms of things that I could do and in terms of
yes.
things that I could have achieved.
Mhm.
But then, you know, fundamentally, I have always been a very social person. So I cannot
Mhm.
remain isolated.
Okay.
And I started interacting with more and more people. There were people from other premier schools as well, DPS in Jaipur, yeah, who
Okay.
were again in the same situation as me. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
there's just this like misery loves company. And it's just that sense of camaraderie that develops. And then the more people you get to know, the more
Mhm.
you realize that your preconceived notions are meaningless.
Yes. Yes.
People are just people, and you have
Mhm.
to really
Mhm.
give them a chance. And so,
Mhm.
around second semester, it really clicked for me,
Okay.
right? Because during the exams, people forget like who the other person is. Everybody
Mhm.
just wants everybody's help.
Yes.
Everybody has the same problems, the same
Yes.
situations, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what you wanted. Right now, all of you have a very similar problem, and
Mhm.
the only way you're going to get through that is together.
Mhm.
So, in that process, once those walls came down, I started interacting with a lot of people,
Mhm.
and I learned so much about myself
Mhm.
through learning about these other people that I had initially not even thought about in my own selfish
Mhm.
misery.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's the best way I can put it.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that I had that experience because a lot of those people I am still friends with. Every
Oh.
time I'm in Lucknow, I still hang out with them. I still call them on their birthdays. If they're in Bangalore or around Bangalore, I still make plans with them because
Mhm.
through that experience, I learned to shed a lot of my inhibitions and just become more social and learn to interact with people, even though there might not be something common in the very beginning. I feel like this is one skill that has really stuck with me since that experience and really been very, very helpful, not just throughout my B school, but even throughout my corporate journey. So, yeah, I mean, even though it seems like a very polar opposite situation that probably, again, wouldn't have been the best situation to be in at the time,
Right.
but I can look back on it now and realize how important it was to overall personal growth.
Was there a reverse bias kind of thing also? Because here's a guy who is polite, well behaved, usually talks in English, and there are people who are coming from different backgrounds, maybe the eastern part of the state they're coming. Did you feel any kind of I don't know what the correct word would be. Sometimes they do tend to get aggressive.
I personally never faced any situation like that because, again, I have always, like I said, I've always been very sociable and I know when to keep my mouth shut and, so I never really faced into any of those issues. But here's the funny thing. We have this subject in first year called business communication, right? And I mean, so here's the thing. Business communication on surface seems like a very simple subject, right? It's just a bunch of email writing, letter writing, report writing. But then, like you mentioned, because by virtue of the schools we went to and the pedagogy that these schools had, we became very adept at these things. It was a second nature to us, right? But a lot of people in the same course, they were not as familiar with those subjects and those topics as I was, and a couple of my other friends were. Whereas at the same time, there were other subjects that these people were better at than us because they had their own unique way of studying that we could not possibly replicate. So it became a very symbiotic relationship where, like it was like, I can help you with business communication. You don't have to worry about report writing. And they were like, yeah, you know what? You don't have to worry about audit. I'll just tell you how I study for these things and we can both of us just get this done together. And so that's also how I made a lot of good friends because what would happen is, so I had this unique system for memorizing points, right? So in BCom, almost every question has the same exact template. If any of our viewers are watching this who are in BCom, this is like a cheat code for them. At least for LU, the questions repeat every alternate year. Out of the 4 questions of 15 marks, 2 questions repeat every year. Right? And a lot of times the faculty will just straight up give you the bullet points to those questions way in advance in class itself. They will tell you like some offhand remark like, these questions come in exams quite often, so you might want to study. Which is them telling you it's gonna come this year or the next.
Keep your ears open. This is what is coming. Yeah.
But here's the thing, in LU and National PG, people don't really attend college that often because there is no pressure on them, right? And they don't take notes because it's not school, nobody's going to check. So this is the reason most people miss out on something so simple. But when you have those bullet points, like literally all you have to do is for a 14-mark question, those 5 points that you've got, you just have to remember those points and write a page's worth of content that is at least tangentially related to whatever the topic is, right? So, for example, if I asked you about, tell me the salient features of organizational behavior. This is an arbitrary question. It doesn't make sense. But this is the kind of questions that come, right? So you don't even need to know anything about organization behavior. You just need to know the 5 points. And I would just learn the first acronym for every point. So like, let's just say it's like AFKMB, right? So I would just remember, so for salient features would be AFKMB, right? And that mnemonic would just strike the correct sequence of sentences for me. And then it's just about like if salient features of OB, let's just say one of them is like a matrix-based organization structure where there are 2 different interlinked departments. That's all you need to remember. You just need to write 100 words based on these like 5-10 words. And if anybody has read books throughout their life or has read newspapers or anything, they have enough of a command on the language to write
Yes.
out those 100 words and fill up a page.
Yes. Yes.
So I discovered this very early on during my first exam itself. And obviously, like, sharing is caring, right? So you tell everybody that, you know what, just do this, just do this, just do this.
Yes.
And so throughout undergrad, almost all of us got 7 pointers all the time, right? Which was very close to what the highest national PG used to give us in the first place. And like, I'm not even kidding. The only time I got less than a 7 pointer was the semester during which I was giving CAT and other entrances.
Okay.
And I didn't study anything. Like, I'm just being very honest, because CAT was the bigger priority at the moment, and I still got a 6.2 GPA. So if by just memorizing 25, 30 points you get a 6.2 GPA, I'm like, that's a great return on investment, right? So that was basically how I got through undergrad and how I made friends with these people. Just like learning and discovering all these tricks, sharing with them, and figuring out where, you know, both of us can help each other and just overall grow together.
But there is also a kind of danger of falling into mediocrity.
Definitely. This is something that I will 100% vouch for. If a person does not realize that they are slacking and they're getting away with it,
yes,
they will 100% fall into the trap. Because I feel like the only reason I didn't is because I had CAT preparation going on simultaneously. And CAT preparation was something which really ignited my competitive spirit. Because, you know, we had these constant mocks every week, right? Where you and your friends are giving the mocks and they're constantly assessing your scores. So, like, you're always cognizant of the fact that you're slacking, because you have this metric that you're tracking week after week. That, okay, 1 week in the mock CAT, I got like a 85 percentile, whereas my friend got 87. That means I'm not doing good enough. I have to keep pushing harder and harder and harder. So because of this particular preparation strategy, I never fell into that trap of mediocrity where I could just coast by, because I had something where I had to push and give all. But I will be the first person to admit that when it came to college, I 100% chose to slack and coast by on this tricks and these hacks that I had discovered. But then again, it was in service of a goal. It wasn't just because so I can chill, you know, and not, you know, and just kick back and have fun. It was because I knew that by doing this, I am saving a lot of time and effort that I can just put into CAT preparation. And I knew from the start that a person like me with my profile is going to need to give everything into CAT preparation if they want to get into an IIM, because my math was terrible, right? Like, it was so terrible that I did not even take up math in 11th and 12th. And math is one of those deal breakers in CAT.
Yes.
English, I was fortunate enough to know that, yeah, you know what, it's fine, I can get away with English. But again, here's the thing. Getting a 95 in English and a 99 in English can often be the difference in getting a call from an IIM and not getting a call from an IIM, right?
Yes.
So I didn't want to take that chance either, even though I knew that I could. I could spend less time on English and spend more time on math, because math was definitely going to be the deal breaker for me if I didn't study. With critical reasoning, DINR, I always think of it as critical reasoning. The more we practice, the more adept we'll get at solving those questions. Because from 2016 onwards, CAT completely changed the format. It was no longer about the standard systems that we had about games and tournaments and those circular seating arrangements, right? It became more critical reasoning oriented, where it was like case studies.
Yes.
So I knew that I needed to at least give 3 hours to math every day and 2 hours to DINR. Otherwise, I was just not going to make it. So it was a trade-off. I made my choices. The 5 hours I saved by slacking off in college, I put all of those 5 hours into studying for CAT. Like, I have never been an early riser, but during that CAT prep, I would wake up and attend the 7:30 a.m. class for maths until 10:30 every day. So, yeah, I mean, mediocrity is something that is bound to happen unless a person has something else that is driving them towards their idea of success.
So this CAT
Yeah.
Sorry. This cat prep was what? Right from the first year, or maybe in the latter half of graduation years?
In the latter half,
In the
because
latter. Okay.
first year I was just planning more towards IPMAT.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's kind of similar, but not really. I
Mhm.
feel like IPMAT is an easier exam.
Mhm.
The interviews might be more complicated, but again, they're complicated because people are not used to it. Because this was
Exactly.
16, 17 at the time, right?
Just a kid out of school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And with CAT, I think I started taking it seriously around mid 2016, which was like about my second year.
Okay.
At least I started taking math seriously because I knew that if I did not take math seriously, it's just not going to end well.
Mhm.
Um, I gave CAT 2016 very casually, right? Like
Okay.
I did not plan on it.
Mhm.
And my dad was like, just do it. You only given mock CAT so far. Just
Mhm.
give it and see what happens.
Mhm.
He was not confident at all.
Okay.
He thought that I'm gonna do terribly. And like so, like see, here's the thing. I would tell them all the time that relax, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine.
Mm.
But on some level, even I was,
Uh,
the minute I went and sat, yeah, exactly. The minute I went and sat in that exam and that screen popped up, I was like, ah, maybe that was
Blackout.
right. Yeah. But I gave that and
Mhm.
I got a 92%. So
Decent enough.
that was, yeah, that was a shocking moment for me
Mhm.
because for one, it taught me that everything that I've been doing so far, it's very clearly working.
Ye- Yes.
It's
Yes.
not at the same level that I wanted to be, but I have a year to get at the level that I
Mhm.
wanted to be, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that really spurred me on because even in that first year, I remember I had like a 97 or something in English.
Mhm.
I had like a 60 something in DINR.
Okay.
And oddly enough, I had a 70 something in math.
Okay.
So that really, it was an eye-opening moment for me because it taught me, okay, I am not at terrible at the things that I thought I was extremely terrible at, right?
Mhm.
Because getting a 60 and a 70 at something that you thought you were going to get a 30 and 40 at, that
Okay.
is a revelation.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So it was at that moment it became very clear to me that this is not an insurmountable goal. This is a very
Mhm.
easily surmountable goal. I
Mhm.
just have to learn to manage my time. I just have to learn to prioritize the questions. And I
Mhm.
just have to learn which questions I'm never going to be able to solve. So I should just
Actually.
chuck them aside and move on with my life.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think this was this strategy, right? To understand what I can do, what I cannot do, to learn to leave the things that I cannot do
Mhm.
and prioritize. I
Mhm.
think this was the number one thing that actually helped me crack CAT 2017 because I got like
Mhm.
a 96 point something, which
Mhm.
again, I mean, I would have wanted more.
Mhm.
But then I realized that the calls I would have gotten because of my academic profile would have pretty much been the same. So,
Same.
now I'm
Yes.
like, it's probably better I got a 96 point something and
Uh-huh.
got these points rather than 98 point something because then I would have had regrets. And
Yeah.
now I don't have regrets. Now I'm like, yeah, you know what, this is probably what I deserve. So
Uh,
I'm pretty happy with that now.
talk about those 500 days of preparation between 16 and 17.
Right.
Uh, when you aren't even sure of the results, and what keeps you going? What keeps you going?
Right. So honestly, this is more about who I am as a person,
Mhm.
and I am someone who's always wanted more than they have. When
Mhm.
I was younger, it was obviously in more materialistic terms, right?
Mhm.
So like when you're just what 18, 19, you see the world in
Mhm.
terms of objects,
Mhm.
objects that you covet, objects that you want, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I remember in 2017 when iPhone 10 launched for the first time, and I
Mhm.
saw the mind-boggling price tag of 1 lakh for a phone at the time. And as a child, when you're materialistic, right? You look at those things, and all you want is those things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And even though I have grown up very comfortably, like I am always, acknowledging that privilege that my parents gave me a very comfortable life.
Mhm.
The person I was, I
Mhm.
still wanted more and more and more.
Mhm. Mhm.
And my mom always used to tell me that if you really want more and more, and if you really want the best of things, then
Mhm.
you have to try to become the best version of yourself because that is the only way you will be able to get the kind of life that you want for yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, like being very honest, unless someone is really talented at singing or a sport, in India, the only way they're going to get to the best version of their life is through excellence in academics,
Yes, very true.
right?
Very true.
And it became very clear to me that I have a very obvious interest in the field of management.
Mhm.
So I have this exam that is widely renowned
Mhm.
for giving people access to the kind of education that
Mhm.
gives them the kind of access to the kind of jobs that people often see in movies and
Yes,
shows, right?
yes, yes.
So when you're 17, 18, you watch a show like Mad Men or something like Suits or whatever, and you don't take away the job that that
Mhm.
okay, someone is a lawyer, someone is an ad
Mhm.
executive, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You don't watch The Wolf of Wall Street and take away the right moral lessons from the
Right,
movie about how Leonardo DiCaprio's character was a terrible person.
right.
No, all you see is people in suits in glass offices
Mhm.
doing things that seem really cool, and you
Mhm.
just want a job that gets you there,
That
right?
lifestyle, actually.
Exactly. So it was a combination of my general disposition towards
Mhm.
life and
Mhm.
this childhood idea that had always been in my head that, I give cat, I go to an IIM, I get to a job that allows me to live like this.
Mhm. Mhm.
I realize that now that I'm older, saying it out loud, that it seems like a very shallow motivation. And I won't
Mhm.
even deny the fact that it is.
Mhm.
But I I want to be cognizant of that. That this is the reason that kept me going. I don't want to cook up a story and say that, it was like some adversity or something because it was not.
It
It
wasn't.
was really just, yeah, it was really just a childish, shallow motivation to
Mhm.
have the things in life that I could only dream about when I was a kid. And, people often talk about positive motivations and negative
Mhm.
motivations and how
Mhm.
they affect our experience of the outcome and how we perceive things after we've gotten those things.
Mhm.
And I will 100% attest to the fact that positive motivations are always better than negative motivations.
Yes,
So
yes.
now that I'm on the other side of things, right? When people ask me about reasons to do something or not do something, I
Mhm.
tell them do not think about these things from a scarcity perspective. Don't think about the things you won't have if you
Mhm.
don't do this, because that's
Mhm.
what I did.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when you do that, you don't truly enjoy the things that you get because that scarcity is always at the back of your mind. And it's
Mhm.
always every time you have a small misstep, every time you stumble somewhere, that scarcity mindset turns into insecurity and then that turns into imposter syndrome. Then do you even deserve the things that you've got or not?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Right? So I always tell my friends and other people that think about all the positive ways this is going to impact your life. Think about all the small augmentations, right? That is also how I treat things now in life. That
Mhm.
now that I am where I am, what are the positive changes that have happened? So I just tell people to take this process and start it way earlier because then they will be happier about the things that they do. They will feel more sustained motivation. And then when they accomplish the things that they accomplish, they will
Mhm.
feel happier. I know this is slightly off topic and tangential to what we were actually talking about,
Mhm.
but I feel it's an important addendum to the
It
whole
is.
motivation question.
Okay, one bad mock
Hmm?
and you go home. Uh, how do you bounce back? Because suddenly the dream seems too far.
Yeah. So I will be very honest with you. I was never very good at taking bad marks in a very healthy or a positive manner,
Mhm.
right? Because like how the difficulty level is it's deliberately very unpredictable. Like you
Mhm.
could
It
get
is.
a 94 or 95 percentile in one mock, and
Mhm.
then you could get a 77 in the next one. Never mind the fact that the 77 mock is designed to be difficult,
Yes.
right? So for me, it was always just about hyper analyzing what went wrong, right?
Okay.
And context is very important because I mean we look at things in terms of trends, right? So
Hmm.
let's say, for example, we have the smog, right? And it's exceptionally terrible. DILR is a nightmare, and you're only able to solve three questions,
One set and three
right?
questions.
And
Yeah.
all three, yeah, and all three turn out to be wrong, which happens very often,
Yes,
right?
it does.
So it's very natural to feel down and think about that, oh, you're not doing enough, and like go hypercritical and hyper analyze and everything.
Hmm.
But what's important is context.
Okay.
You must have given 15, 20 other marks before that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's important to look at your performance in DILR in those
Mm-hmm.
marks. You have to look at the number of questions you've attempted. You have to look at the number of questions you've solved. You have to
Mm-hmm.
look at the number of questions you've gotten correct.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to look at the overall sectional percentile, sectional score that you've gotten. Because look, if everything is trending upwards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like let's say you get a consistent 85 to 90 percentile sectional in the DILR,
Mm-hmm.
and this time it's terrible, you get like a 15.
Mm-hmm.
It's an outlier. It's
Yes.
not an indicator of anything. It's just an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing you can do is forget about it. Keep
Okay.
doing what you've been doing because it's clearly been working for you in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Take a deep breath. Give the next one and the
Mm-hmm.
next and the next.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it starts to repeat with some degree of frequency,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not a problem. It's just a blip.
Okay.
And of course, it always helps to consult your faculty that, okay, this is something that I feel I did wrong. Because
Mm-hmm.
marks will definitely throw curveballs at you.
Yes.
And you just need to know how to bounce back from them. And the only thing that helps is having that added context and that analysis of your time. Otherwise, it's very easy to spiral into just that whole self pity that you're not doing anything and it's
Exactly.
not going well.
Yeah. So, CAT result would be out in the month of January, first week, I suppose.
Yep.
Did you get it on your phone, or was there any other going on the website and checking it?
So honestly, we did not know what time the result was going to be out, right? And initially, we had planned that my parents were like, okay, so I was nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if it's going to come in the morning, it usually comes by 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, then my dad was like, okay, you know what, I'm going to go to the office. It's going to be chill. Because he was like, if it doesn't turn out the way, he thought it would be nice for him to be home and be supportive and everything.
Yes.
So it was 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
The result did not come back then. So I was like, you know what, that's fine. You can go to the office. Because if it's not at 9, it's going to come in the afternoon. And in order to take my mind off of it, one of my friends and I, we just thought, let's just go for a movie. We'll watch the movie. We'll come back, check the results. If it's out, great. If it's not, at least then we won't have to think about it. The minute we finish making that plan, I get a call that, hey, the results are out. You want to check them, right? And so, like, I'm nervous. My mom is in the kitchen. I haven't told her yet that the results are out. My hands are trembling and I'm keying in those numbers into the portal. And I see the scorecard and I quickly index it against what are the IIMs I can get a call from, do the sectionals match. When I have a 90% certainty that, yeah, it's good enough, I'm like, hey, mom, results are out. And she was like, tell me, kaise hua? And I'm like, yeah, it's good. It's definitely gonna get us those calls and everything. And then everyone is elated and they're like, this is great. And then we got a call from time that, hey, everybody who's gotten this score, come here. And then I remember you were there talking to us about how the next couple of weeks are going to be very important. And the weird thing is that day was 5.5 years ago, right?
Yes.
And a lot of it, when I was living that day, it seemed like a blur. Like everything just happened. Like it's 9:40, the results are out, and it's 1 p.m. and I'm sitting in the classroom listening to you tell us how important interviews are going to be. And it's 5 and I'm back home and I haven't had a chance to respond to all the people asking me how the results have been. That day was a blur on that day. But all these years later, yeah, when I think about it, it's like I remember everything that happened that day. So yeah, it was like and that was some experience.
And then probably the realization that okay, there's still a bigger hurdle to cross.
Yes, exactly. So this is the thing, right? We spend our entire year thinking about how CAT is the most difficult exam on earth and it's like so stressful and everything. But then we actually give it and then we clear it and we realize CAT is actually quite a simple paper. It's really not that hard, right? But then that whole interview prep with the GDPI mock simulations and learning that okay, there's this thing, general awareness that we also have to like crack now.
Yes.
That is the thing that gets to most people. because that is completely different from what anybody has prepared for,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And for me, especially, I had no experience. That was my first time doing anything like that.
Mhm.
It was nerve wracking.
It is. It is. It
Like
is.
if I had experience, if I had already worked, and if I was going into that situation with interviews and general awareness and all, I would
Mhm.
have probably been fine, because then with these added experiences later in life, you
Mhm.
understand more about how the world works.
Right. Right.
But for anybody who's a fresher who's going into that, it is so terrifying. Like I
And
remember sitting for my interviews, and it was just my hands were shaking at one point. I was like, this is so different from everything I have ever done before. And like you said, there's no telling, right? Like we just think you give the exam, you're set. Nothing bad is going to happen. You get the colleges.
yes.
But it's like those interviews, you say one wrong thing and you're out of that list. And of course, it happened to me in multiple colleges, right?
It would have. Yeah. It
And
would have.
looking back on things now, it just seems so stupid. It was such an obvious trick question,
Mhm.
right? But then, because you don't know and you're so nervous, you say
Mhm.
these things that the other person will let it just bacha. Nahi, nahi,
Mhm.
usko. So it's just what it is.
And during prep, you see people around who may be having more experience and uh, who have had a kind of maybe they are older in age as well, so they can handle that pressure. And then you sit there
Yeah.
at the back of the class and thinking to yourself, "यार, ये तो मुश्किल लग रहा है." 96 going down the drain, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, especially with things like GDs, right? So
हाँ,
GD is every, like, it's a limited amount of time. 5 minutes mein 10 log hai. Everybody
हाँ,
has
हाँ.
to like get their point and make an impression. Otherwise, like it's done, right? Go
Yes,
home.
yes.
So the thing is, there is this very subtle balance
Mhm.
between being assertive
Mhm.
and being overpowering.
Overpowering, yes.
Yeah. Like when I was younger, I did not know that. I all I used to think was like, बोलना आता है, points दिमाग में है, सामने वाले मतलब नहीं, मैं बोलूंगा अपने.
बोल ही दूंगा. हाँ.
This is yeah, like this is exactly how I used to approach GDs and
Mhm.
NMIMS. Like I I screwed up that GD. It's just so stupid to think about it, right? I think it was a very simple topic on something like how to manage traffic better. I'm like, see, first of all, I have no idea how to manage traffic better, right? So I should, yeah, exactly. This is nowhere near the sort of thing that anybody ever thinks to prepare
Mhm.
for.
Mhm.
Such an abstract topic. The most obvious thing to do here, like now I can tell you, is to think about the cause, effect,
Yes,
potential
yes,
solutions,
yes,
impact, right?
yes.
Like that is
Mhm.
how I would
Mhm.
structure my thoughts. And
Mhm.
the most smart advice I give to people now for JDs is like, you don't have to be the first person to speak.
Exactly.
Wait for someone to speak. They
Mhm.
will, the first person to speak usually has the least relevant point, right?
Yes.
But then you can often piggyback off of that point and
Yes.
put your point that contextualizes things.
Mhm.
And of course, I didn't know that, right? So I made the mistake. I was just rambling, and then people were trying to say, like, no, no, we can do this, we can do this. And
Mhm.
the thing with LMIMS is they appreciate the group if you actually conclude the GD with a proper solution.
अच्छा.
So we had 2 minutes left, and rather than just doing a pros and cons, like, yeah, the pros are good, we can consider this concluded.
Okay.
And so yeah, I did that, and I thought Macharya kya gazab performance diya hai. Anybody will just like. So I am very happy, right? And that I'm going into the interview with that mindset.
Mhm.
But these professors who've seen countless people like this over
Mhm.
the years,
Mhm.
they know that there's nothing behind them.
This is
This
half
is just
cooked.
what this
Yes.
person thinks.
हाँ,
Yeah, they're like,
हाँ.
this is what this person thinks they should be doing. So
Mhm.
obviously they go very in depth during your interview and try to answer you really probing, really critical questions,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And I made such a simple mistake, right? Like they had asked me, like,
Mhm.
who is like a business icon for me, right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
said Steve Jobs because I had read the Walter Isaacson book and I felt
And
that I had a decent
interview.
amount of understanding about his
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
So I was fully prepared to give a TED talk on Steve
Mhm.
Jobs and his product
Mhm.
philosophy. But then
Mhm.
they asked me, no, no, who is your favorite Indian icon,
Okay.
right? And so, like, the first name that popped into my head was Ratan Tata. So I said Ratan
Okay.
Tata.
Okay.
They're like, why? And I'm like, he's done a lot of good things.
Mhm.
But then they were like, No, but his family has done a lot of good things. What is the
What has
one
he done?
primary accomplishment that Ratan Tata himself has done, right? And like I could only think of the nano. So I just said the nano. And they were like,
Flop
oh,
ho
it's a
gaya.
failure. But you know, but the idea was good.
Yeah.
And they're like, who cares if the idea is good if it doesn't make it to the masses? And they're like, we're giving you another chance. Think about it again. So I wanted to talk about Ambani and talk about Jio because at 2017, 2018, it was just a huge thing, right?
Yes.
But then I decided to play it what I considered smart. And like, I don't know enough about the telecom sector. They can ask me questions about the telecom sector and I will completely flop here. So I said Azim Premji. Why? Because Wipro. And like we all know that Wipro does a lot of CSR based work.
Yeah.
They're like, so obviously the next question was like, why Azim Premji? I'm like, because Wipro does a lot of CSR work. And they're like, do you think other companies don't do CSR work? And I'm like, no, they do, but Wipro does the most. They're like, what does Wipro do? And I'm like, I don't know, like farmer support and like LGBTQ rights and it's like this random whatever. Yeah. And so obviously they knew that this is not going to work. And I still thought that I had done a good job, right? The funny thing with NMIMS is if you get waitlisted until number 1200, you convert. My waitlist number was 1268.
Okay.
I remember that because it was so close, like a literal 5% margin, right? But I've always held that 5% margin is inaccurate in how incompetent I was. I would have straight rejected myself if I had given those kind of answers now. But yeah, that's a very memorable experience that I feel like everyone can learn from.
This cap interview was before Narsi Manji, after?
Cap was after. So I honestly need to tell you the truth. With Cap, because of the whole Narsi thing, right? I was already a little rattled. Because, like, see, the minute you give the interview, you think this is great, it's done. But then after that, doubts start to creep in. So I had thought that the Narsi interview went great. And the next day I had the IMT interview in Mumbai itself.
Okay.
So the IMT interview was a lot more technical and a lot more complicated, right?
In terms of academic questions?
Yeah, in terms of academics as well as critical thinking questions. So I'll just give you an example here because this is a story that I've always found very funny. I was carrying this notepad with me to the interview. That was an Indigo branded notepad that I had gotten in the flight, right? So they asked me general questions about, economics because I had mentioned it was one of my favorite subjects and everything. And then they noticed that Indigo notepad. And they're like, did you fly to Mumbai for the interview? I'm like, yeah, I did. They're like, where from? I told them Lucknow. And they asked me, what is the name of Lucknow's airport? So I was like, yeah, it's Chaudhary Charan Singh International Airport. And they were like, who was Chaudhary Charan Singh? And my brain completely blanked, right? So I just told him, I don't know, but because there's an airport named after him, he must have been someone famous.
He had a bloody airport named after him, for God's sake.
And the entire panel burst out laughing. Right? And they just sent me away after that it's fine, you can go now. And on the way back, I called my parents and like, Mom, it's like, I narrated the same thing to my parents. And they were so laughing, like, how do you not know Chaudhary Charan Singh is one of the prime ministers? And I'm like, I just did not remember at the time. I don't know why, but I completely blanked on it. But here's the funny thing. NMIMS, which I thought went great, I did not convert. IMT, which I thought went terrible, I converted in the first list itself.
Okay.
Right? So these two experiences, going into CAP after this, my brain was all over the place. Right? Because first of all, with CAP, you know that it's like one shot. You mess it up, you lose out on all IIMs, you don't get anything now.
Yeah.
So I went to the interview, and first of all, we were like very distracted that day because the interview was at the Radisson in Dwarka in Delhi, and they were shooting this Varun Dhawan film October at the same venue. Right? There was a second unit doing pickup shots near the main atrium and everything. So obviously, everyone's a little distracted by that. That you see film crews and all doing pickup shots.
Right.
And then I went upstairs and. I'm someone who's very interested in movies and everything, right? So my mind is like, okay, what's happening, right? But then, like, obviously, like, I'm trying to get myself on the straight and narrow that no, this is an important exam. I have to, just get through this. So it started off smoothly enough. They gave us this written ability test because that's what they had for CAP at the time.
WAT, yeah, WAT, yeah.
Yeah. And the topic was again traffic related. They're like, what do you think? They're like, why do you think odd even is beneficial for Delhi? And give your points for and against, right? So 20 minutes, again, a traffic related topic. And I'm like,
why?
And like, again, really. So everything that I had done during the NM interview, I had obviously come back and read up about it because I was prepared that maybe this might come up again, right? So again, I just like random stuff like have more intersection points, build more flyovers, use electric buses. This was my genius master plan to solve traffic congestion and air quality in Delhi.
In a big
right?
city.
Yeah, and like I was just 20. I had no, like, yeah, I mean, it seems good enough, and I submitted it. And then with the PI, right, it was a stress interview.
Okay.
And it was the kind of stress interview that like really rings you. So they asked me everything related from accounts to economics to politics and a wide ranging list of topics that I absolutely had no clue. Okay. Like history and stuff. Like one of the prominent examples I remember, and I always tell everybody, is one of the professors. They asked me who is Mir Zafar. And I'm like, I have no idea who Mir Zafar was, right? Like obviously I googled him on the way back and everything, but I was like, I don't know. They were like, you had BCom in undergrad. How do you not know who Mir Zafar was? And I'm like, I just told him flat out, like, I don't think he was anybody related to business. I think he's a historical figure. Yeah, he's like, so if you don't know who Mir Zafar is, how can you say that he's a historical figure and not a prominent person from the field of accounts or economics? I'm like, नाम सुना सुना लग रहा है उसका. History में पढ़ा था. So, like, I took the be honest and be open thing way too literally, right? And then obviously those people were like, okay, like they're like, this is clearly not going to work on him. Like he's already admitted that he doesn't know, and he's already being very open about why he doesn't think it's an accounts person. So then they asked me to make a balance sheet, a cash flow statement, and everything. And then I know for a fact I made it correctly. And they were like, are you sure this is correct? Are you 100% sure? I don't think this is correct. I'm like, no, I mean, this is pretty much what has been taught to us. So I'm fairly confident it is correct. And I think because of the fact that I stood my ground on those things that I did correctly is the reason I did not get cross-questioned the entire time. Because they knew that if they cross-question me on something, if I don't know about it, I will straight up admit that I don't know about it. And if I know about it, then I am not going to succumb to the pressure tactics. But the thing is, if you're able to navigate a lot of these pressure questions correctly, correctly again being subjective term here, it doesn't get easier. It only gets harder from there, especially if you're like a fresher who doesn't have any relevant experience or great grades throughout your career, right? Questions started to become, why are your marks in class 10th lower? Again, honestly, that, I was not sure about what I wanted. I was figuring it out. They're like, do you have it figured out now? I'm like, yeah. I took BCom, I've taken interest in business and everything. And so at the time they were doing those extempore things, right? I don't know if they still do it, but they gave me a minute. Yeah, they do it sometimes, right? So they gave me a minute to talk about the impact of BPOs on international business. And again, it's not like something that like I can tell you about it now, but I didn't know about it then, right?
Right.
And I asked them, like, can I take 30 seconds to think about it? They're like, no. So I just took a very BCom answer approach to it. Like BPOs are business processing units. What they do is like they offshore a particular business unit to customer support, and they have people and share stuff. And I just generic stuff, right? Like Donald Trump's election was a huge deal back then, and he used to talk about how people from other countries are taking away jobs. So I was like, yeah, the impact of BPOs is what Donald Trump talks about. And so the minute I mentioned Donald Trump's name and the fact that this thing is like, it just turned about the US election that had happened in 2016.
Yes.
And they're like, why do you think this whole Trump thing happened? And again, like, I know about it, but I don't know about it in the detail. But so that's the thing, right? because I had been prepared for the fact that there might be these grilling based interviews, I did not completely lose it. And I was able to navigate through it by telling them that this is what I have read, this is what I have learned, this is the source I have read it from, this is what the extent of my understanding is. Because I remember something in the 2016 election about the electoral college votes not tallying the exact trend that the media was broadcasting at the time, right? So I mentioned that. They asked me, what is the electoral college system? I told them what the electoral college system was because I had read about it in the Hindu. And then they asked me, do you think the electoral college system makes sense? Now, here's the thing. As a person sitting in India where the democracy and the electoral model is very different,
Very different. Yeah.
we cannot realistically have an opinion on the electoral college and whether the system is great or not. So that's exactly what I told them.
Okay.
That we do not follow a similar system. So it is not exactly prudent for us to comment on the fact that it makes sense or not, because America has clearly followed it for a very long time. And if they have not reformed it, then it clearly must be working for them. So that was how I navigated that interview. But again, CAP scoring is very different. So for a few IIMs, I got waitlisted.
Okay.
A few of those waitlists were convertible, a few of them were not. But with IIMs like Ranchi, Raipur, Rohtak, I managed to clear it in the first go.
Okay.
So today, if someone asks me about the CAP interview, I cannot tell them if it was good or bad. I can only tell them what I did at the time and what I think of it now and what I would do or not do differently if I could do it again. But yeah, given the fact that I was able to get first calls from 3 out of 6 IIMs that I sat for, I think it didn't turn out to be too terrible at the time.
So I am Raipur finally you decided on, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And day one on the campus, how was it? Finally, and IIM t-shirt or something.
I knew we were going to get to that question, and honestly, it's like it feels so long ago now, right? It almost feels like a different lifetime. Because so when I joined IIM Raipur, we were in the process of shifting campuses from the old one to the new one, right?
The new one.
And because of this entire process going on, the administration was completely focused on making sure the new campus was ready to move in the absolute best shape that they could have it, right? And as a result, the old campus had fallen in a state of disarray, and people were not really concerned about how things were there at the time. So
you went to the old campus. You went to the old campus.
Yeah, I was there at the old campus for like the first 3 months, and after that we shifted to the new campus.
Okay.
So I got to the old campus, and for the first few minutes, you're like, okay, yeah, this is an IIM. I wanted to get here. I got here. This is amazing. But then you see the rickety building. You see mosquitoes. I'm like, something is, not tracking. I was there with my dad, and this was we visited the whole thing after, and I was like, yeah, यही ऐसे होता है क्या? And I'm like, हाँ यार, मैं सोचता मैं भी 2 साल के मतलब इसीलिए पढ़ाई की थी मैंने. But then obviously we knew that the new campus was coming up, so we went to visit the new campus and just check out the entire. And then we were like, नहीं, ठीक है, मतलब this is just a temporary thing. This is so I am privileged in the sense that I got 2 first day on campus experiences because I am Raipur. First being at the old campus where everything was a little bit of a shock because we were not really prepared for it to be the way it was. But then it makes sense. So I don't hold any grudges because of that. Because then we went to the new campus. The new campus was just incredible. It was like this entire stone and glass building, and we had private rooms, and it was so comfortable. It was like they were committed to ensuring that we were as comfortable as we could be for the 2 years that we were there. So yeah, first campus experience, slightly shocking. Second campus experience, incredible. No complaints.
Do you have air conditioning in your hostel rooms?
We don't actually need it because the temperature in Raipur never actually gets that bad. But IIM Raipur has this thing called radiant cooling in every room. So you have these pipes turning chilled water across every wall in the campus. The rooms are pretty chilled normally as well. This was one of the biggest things that they had from a sustainability perspective. One of the biggest things for the new campus was it has to be sustainable. It has to always take a nature first approach to the way it goes about its doings. That includes using solar electricity. That includes using radiant cooling instead of air conditioning wherever possible. Just little things like that to make the entire experience more sustainable for everyone.
Okay. Because I went to IIM Lucknow in Feb, and I found out there was no way they could bring the temperature down in the hostel room. It was so hot. They did not have that air conditioning. So the Raipur in that way
No,
was
we
good.
did not have those issues. Like the newer campuses, yeah, the newer campuses in those regard are incredible. They are built on the completely new modern architecture with creature comforts in mind. So students don't ever have to feel like anything is missing. They get what they pay for, basically.
Okay, Acha, now we all know there's a ranking system. I mean, Ahmedabad A, and then B,
Mhm.
and then C, and then K. Was there any moment of kind of a complex that these guys are from a better institute or something like that, when you interacted with these people on the campus, when you went to for different events, or even on job, when you would find people from various
Right.
institutes coming in?
Honestly, I feel like in the IIM community, people tend to not have that kind of an attitude.
Okay.
Because the thing is, with MBAs, right? Like in the job market, particularly, what I've observed is that with certain roles, for sure, they would have a requirement that it has to be an MBA from an IIM ABC or maybe an
Okay.
ISP or an MBA or an Excel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most jobs will not actually have that particular requirement. They'll see that you're from an IIM, they'll see that you have an MBA, they'll see that you have the required skills, and you'll most likely be eligible to interview for the position, and you'll have a very fair shot of getting that job.
Okay.
So I feel like because of that, open to all nature of jobs post MBA, people in the IIM community don't tend to be snobs about the colleges they go to because they try to inculcate that kind of relationship with everyone.
Okay.
Because you never really know who might end up in what position and who you might need to network with, right? So at least that's what my experience has been. Somebody else might have a completely different experience, but I've met a lot of people from a lot of higher IIMs, so to speak, and they've always been very polite and very friendly.
Okay. So I mean, like there are what 19 or 20 IIMs now, and when kids are preparing for CAT, and when they get the calls from the so-called lower or the newer IIMs, they are very apprehensive about joining them. What I tell them that, boss, this is an IIM, they are going to take care of their brand anyway. So regardless of where they are, if you feel that you won't be improving too much on the score next year, you just go. Maybe it is Bodh Gaya, Amritsar, Jammu, Sambalpur, whatever it is. I hope I'm telling the right thing.
So honestly, I can talk about tier 2 IIMs because I went to an IIM which was tier 2 back when I was there. Tier 3, I haven't really interacted with a lot of people, so that I cannot really comment on what the situation is there. But so I'm going to talk a little bit more about IIM Raipur and how I have seen the place evolve in the 2 years I was there for and what it has become now.
Please.
Right. So with any IIM, right, I'll highlight the important things that make the experience of going to an IIM right? The first thing is academics. I know most people are only focused on placements, and even I was when I was younger, like I'll openly admit it now. But the academics are actually the most important part of any IIM.
Okay.
Right? The pedagogy is different from what people are used to in the sense that IIMs follow a completely case-based structure.
Okay.
So you'll have a lot of these Harvard Business Review cases for every subject, be it finance, operations, HR, marketing. And you'll have a lot of these subjects and micro specializations, basically, that you'll have to be good at in order to be good at the jobs that you essentially want to get into later in life. Right? So this pedagogy across most IIMs is similar.
Okay.
So people will have case studies for every subject, and they will have to work in peer groups to work on assignments and solve those cases and interact with faculties. So of course, that is something that I hope people understand, that the pedagogy remains constant, right? It does not change. The faculty is something that I always advise people to look at. Like, you look at the tenure the faculty has, look at the kind of papers they have published, look at the areas of expertise that they've got, right? And if people were to do that, I think what they'd find is that most faculties at most IIMs are extremely qualified for the subject that they're teaching,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Of course, no one can tell the nuances of the way a person teaches, but the qualifications are the exact same across IIMs because they ensure that the highest quality education is provided to the children. At the same time, almost every IIM has visiting faculties from supposedly the higher IIMs, like we were talking about earlier, and at the same time, to have visiting faculty from the industry.
Okay.
So, what I would suggest is that if people are really concerned about the quality of academics, they should hit up people from earlier batches and ask them about the visiting faculty, the corporate interaction, because oftentimes that is going to be the slight difference maker.
Okay.
Right. I can talk about IIM Raipur because I went there, but one of the things that I had discovered during my initial connects with a lot of seniors was that IIM Raipur has a very robust visiting faculty program where we get a lot of corporate faculties every year.
Okay.
And I saw that firsthand because during second year, out of all the subjects I had, for nearly 7 or 8, we had visiting faculties who were at pretty senior positions in their respective organizations. So not only were we studying about the cases, but we were actually learning about what is happening live in those organizations, in those industries, and solving real-time cases, right? So if people are actually concerned about academics, this is the one thing they should look for, talking to people who have already graduated from that particular institute.
Okay.
This is going to help. For placements, honestly, every IIM that is 10 years or older, they're not going to have a problem with placements because you can get placed in one of two ways. Campus placements, where you have an entire bouquet of companies coming either on a single day or on a rolling structure, where they are rolling out different kinds of rules and different kinds of industries, and you have your choice basically. But apart from that, most of these IIMs, even tier 2 IIMs are almost 15 years old now, which is exactly how old Coecoed and all these were like in 2010, 2011, and they were pretty well known at the time as well, right? So all of these IIMs, they have access to the top tier corporate competitions like HUL Line or Godrej Lounge, just to name two. There are so many more. Reliance has something called the TUP, and these case study competitions are open to everyone. They are meritocratic in the sense that the problem is given to you, you solve the case using everything you've learned in class, you crack it, you get the interview call, you win that competition, you are guaranteed a PPI or a PPO or whatever the case might be depending on the rewards. I have seen so many of my friends from IIM Raipur get those PPIs and PPOs even when IIM Raipur was only supposedly 9 years old and not, into that legion of the 10-year mark, right? So if it was happening all those years ago, it continues to happen now. And I still follow the IIM Jaipur page and I see that there's so many more competitions getting added. There are so many more people from my college cracking these competitions. So this again, I feel like if someone is really that worried about placements, they should always check as to what are the kinds of companies that are coming, what are the kinds of roles that are on offer. The placement reports are obviously a helpful place to start, but they can also interface with people from the college and understand what are the kinds of roles that are commonly on offer. Because again, this is a very market situation specific scenario, right?
Yes.
Like if the market is, again, like right now, the market is not great. So it's possible that the role mix that is being offered currently might be different. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's possible. So these are the questions that people can ask to understand if the college's typical placement pool is affected by the market scenario or not. And again, they can find out about the competitions that the college participates in. Because this is what highlights whether a college is going to offer the academic and financial opportunities to people that they want to really go for, right? And for the campus life, honestly, every IIM has a great campus now. Back in my time, Ranchi and Raipur were the only ones that did not have their own campuses, and Rohtak as well. But now all of them have their own campuses, and all of them are pretty great from what I hear. And people talk about fests and cultural activities and corporate activities. Every IIM has those. But again, if that is really that important to someone, they can again connect with people to find out what happens. Because every IIM has this club and committee structure, right? For extracurricular activities. So because I was always into communications and marketing, I took up media and public relations during my time. I had a great time. We used to have a lot of these corporate conferences, right? Like we had HR summit, leadership summits, and one of the best experiences of my life was I got to interview a lot of very senior executives from different departments, from different industries.
Okay.
So that was something that was truly an eye-opening experience for me. And every college has these opportunities. So again, there's really no difference.
Mhm.
And honestly, if you ask me, tier 2 IIMs are no longer tier 2. We can very
Yes,
classify them as tier
Yeah.
1.25 maybe.
Yes.
Because yeah, like during my time, people would have a very clear preference, right? If it's IIM, ABC, LKI, if it's not that, Shillong, otherwise MDI, XLRI, IFT, SIPM, Pune, LMIMS. If none of those happen, then we go to the tier 2 IIMs, then we go to the tier 3 IIMs. But it's not like that anymore. Like, I don't see any reason why someone should have, let's say, an IIM Raipur or an IIM Ranchi on their list lower than something like an MDI. Right?
Exactly.
Again, this is I haven't been to MDI, so I cannot really comment on what MDI is like. But in my current role, we did recruit people from MDI when we went to the campus, right?
Okay.
I was a part of the summer internship recruitment team, and honestly, during my interaction with the MDI people, I thought they were great. They were very well educated, very well rounded. But that's exactly how I also felt about my own college.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So from a first-hand experience, I can tell you that they should not, have it any lower on their list than they would have an MDI or an SIBM or an LMIMS for that matter. Obviously, like different factors play different roles for people when it comes to, say, the location of a college or fees or whatever. But honestly, I think ABC, LKI, great, but everything after that, equally great. No doubts they can go for it.
So it was for you, it was campus placement?
Yeah, I did get placed through campus, but then the pandemic hit.
Yes.
So my job also got delayed indefinitely. And the recruiting company was nice enough to give me an option that if I wanted to look for other opportunities, I could, because they were not sure when they will be able to honor the offer letter.
Okay.
And I chose to do something different.
Okay.
Because it was the pandemic and there was so much uncertainty going on, right? Like just from a personal perspective as well, because we all had these plans and ideas for what we wanted our life to be. But now suddenly all of that was like gone.
Yes.
So I took a couple of months off.
Okay.
I took about 3 or 4 months off. I went back to doing the freelance that I used to love doing.
Okay.
I freelanced with an advertising agency where I worked on a lot of pitches for a lot of great brands. And, I interacted with a lot of senior people from various companies to try to understand their journeys and how to forge a career path in a time of such great uncertainty. And having done that for a few months, it really gave me the clarity as to what I wanted to do next. So I was supposed to join my campus job in July, but that didn't happen. So I spent until I think October trying to figure out what I wanted to do and complete this freelancing work that I was doing.
So you could afford that. You could afford that because if I understand, there is a loan on the head.
We did not have that constraint at the time.
Okay. That was a luxury.
That, like I said, my parents have always ensured that I have a very privileged and comfortable upbringing. So I'm very grateful for that to them because I had the option to take the time and figure out what I really wanted to do and chart my own course forward, right? So I joined a product-based startup in Bangalore at the time. Because, at the time, I was in two minds. A part of me really wanted to pursue consulting as a career because I had always been very interested by it. Right? It's, like I said, it's the whole glass office, black suit thing. But getting into consulting is very hard. And at the time, consulting from, so I'll just give you some background here. So if someone wants to get into consulting, the number one option is McKinsey, Bain, BCG, companies like AT Kearney, Roland Berger, and all these. If not that, then they usually go into management consulting in the big four, PwC, KPMG, EY, Deloitte, right? All of these really top tier consulting firms, great client selection, great projects. But it's also really hard to get into these. because they have a very limited amount of openings every year for summer internships and final placements. And they usually fill these in the first college that they go to, right? And they have a very set hierarchy. So by the time campus placement rolls around, you will either not get the exact profile that you wanted, or maybe the company would have just like fulfilled their requirements and not come to your campus at all. So then you're out of luck, because then you have to try and do it laterally. And laterally means you have to have that kind of experience.
Yes.
And you need to have really stellar academics, which I did not have. And I did not also have like the hands-on work, right? So I knew that I could try for a boutique consulting firm.
Okay.
I gave an interview, I cleared it. But then it felt too early. It did not feel like the right time.
Okay.
So I decided to go with this product-based strategy.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that it was too early? I mean,
too early, right? Okay. So consulting requires you to have a very specific mindset, right? It needs you to be a certain person who is quantitative, who critically analyzes things, and who is adept at finding even the smallest of clues. Consulting can be a lot like detective work, right? Where you're digging through a lot of trash in trying to find that one particular piece of evidence that will link your entire theory and help you solve the case. Okay. That is consulting on a daily basis. So I just felt that because I did not have the kind of experience getting hands-on with the work, I would probably not be a great fit right now.
Okay.
Right. And I did not want to just half-ass it. I did not want to, like I said, mediocrity, right? I did not want to just get into it, not do great, and then just turn away from it for something else. Because I was still very young at the time and I had very little experience. And this was 2020. So I came across this product-based startup out of Bangalore. Great product, great concept, proper product market fit. And like with startups, you always get this hands-on work, right? With larger organizations, you have a very specialized work structure.
It's a template, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I did not want to do it at the time. I was like, I'm just 22, 23. I can do whatever I want for as long as I want. So I joined that place. I had a great 5-6 month stint there. But that is when the second wave of pandemic started.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was even worse.
Exactly. And this was a startup that was dealing with a product that was a great to have, but not a must have. So obviously, like funding tightens, the customers you're selling it to, their purses tighten, they don't want to spend on it. And it became very obvious that the company would need to pivot into something else. And in its current form, it was not going to be sustainable. So that was the first shock to me that, high risk, high reward. This time, the high risk part moved, right? And so obviously, like the people that I worked with, they were great. They offered everybody outplacement support, referrals, glowing referrals for everyone, and great connects to go to other places. And so there was this other company that I landed up in, which had a product that essentially takes the spirit of consulting and boils it down to a product.
Okay.
Right. And again, I had a great stint there for almost a year. But during that entire process, I knew that consulting cannot be distilled down to a product, right? And I used to write a lot of white papers and present a lot of these white papers during these conferences in the US about, how digital adoption is shaping up the industry and what's going to happen next. And it was during this process that someone from PwC saw one of these things and they reached out that there might be a role. And, so obviously I had one of my Arabs who was already at PwC. So I was like that, hey, I understand that this is a role on offer. Like, can you refer me for it? Because I was told that this might be a good fit. And they referred me for it. And because it came through an alum who was already in the system, my CV was shortlisted because during this entire period of 2 years, I had learned how to make CVs that get shortlisted. I had learned how to, leverage the education we had into getting interview calls. Because that is also like a very important aspect that people don't realize that. Like, you went to an IIM with 250, 300, 400 other people.
Right.
How do you leverage what you learned in marketing into personal branding and stand out from everybody else to land there? So having done all those things, I was in a position to actually land that interview call that I had so badly wanted since I was 20. And it was one of the most grueling experiences of my life.
Okay.
It was like a 5 day process, 5 different rounds of interviews with, increasingly more complicated questions, more senior people. And I did not help that at the time. I was down with a really terrible fever, and then which we later found out was probably COVID, right?
Oh.
And so during that entire week, I'm like every day, like I dress up pale completely, sitting in front of a laptop and just answering these super difficult questions about transformation projects and change management for various industries and whatnot. And I still remember the final interview that I had in December 2021. And I was so sure that, it's just probably not going to work because it was the most abstract interview I had ever given in my life. And prior to that interview, the most abstract and difficult interview I had ever given was the MDI interview that I was shortlisted for. Okay. And I really did not make the cutoff for the MDI interview. Okay. They basically just threw me out the game that we don't want you, go away. Right? So like I came out of the interview and I was talking to my mom and I was like, see, I don't know if it's gonna work or not. The only thing that I did wrong in the MDI interview all those years ago was I was not truthful. I thought I could trick them by telling them what they wanted to hear. Yeah. This time, I was 100% honest. I did not hold anything back. I was truthful. And funnily enough, it was that honesty that got me the job at PwC. Yeah. And I've been here for like the last year and a half, and I'm really happy. I like what I'm doing. This is exactly what I wanted to do. So even though it took a very non-traditional path to get to the job I wanted to, I still feel like this was the right path because this was the one that actually allowed me to apply everything that I learned during those 2 years of B school, not just academically, but also socially, also in an extracurricular manner. Because everything that I learned into B school, I applied it in some form or the other during the next 2 years in order to get to the job that I really wanted when I wanted. Right. And so a lot of times when I tell people this, they ask me, but like, could you not have done this without B school? And I'm like, absolutely not. Because this is not just down to intellect or being able to think smart or whatever, right? This is about the soft skills you learn. It's about the experiences that you have that shape you, that make you the best fit for something like this. And every single thing that I do right today, I can point out to an instance in B school where I used to do it wrong and how I learned it over there to actually do it the way it needs to be done later in life. And so that's why everything that I am able to do now, everything that I'm a great fit for, I always 100% credit my B school for me. Because that was the experience that brought me to this point. And I would not trade it for anything else.
Wow. I mean, there are different privileges for people. There are different struggles for people. And I think we have a perception that kids who have had it comfortable in terms of their childhood and the comforts and the stuff that comes with money, they don't have any struggles of their own. But listening to you, I think finding an identity and getting to what you actually desire or want. I mean, that itself is a journey, I suppose, that we all need to know about, because लड़ाइयाँ सबकी अपनी हैं. Nobody got there. Nobody who did anything worth doing got there easy. We all
I agree with that, because my mom and I often talk about this, right? Like my dad, he had it really difficult growing up. So he really had to fight and claw out of his situation to make the life for himself that he now has. And, the older I get, the more I empathize with him and the more I'm able to relate to what he went through. So when you're a kid, you don't understand how grateful you should be for everything that you have.
Hmm.
You like it's a joke where we all often talk about how our parents always talk about going to school was such a struggle. We had to
Yes.
study under street lamps and everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So like we don't take it seriously because our parents have given us enough to sit in an air conditioned room
We can't
on
even
a
imagine that
mahogany
actually.
desk.
Uh,
Yeah, exactly. So it just seems like a joke to us.
mhm, mhm,
But when you get older,
mhm,
I feel like the years add an extra context.
mhm,
Because it's only when we start working, when we start to have ambitions of our own, when we start to have to make sacrifices,
mhm.
that we realize that they probably went through the same thing, but 10 times more intense.
Yes.
Because right now we're at that point where we have the luxury of thinking only about ourselves for the next couple of years, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
our parents did not have that kind of luxury. For
mhm,
them, it was not only about getting out of their situation and making a good life for themselves,
mhm.
but also making sure that their corner of the world was so
Yes.
comfortable that their
Yes.
partner, that their
Mhm.
children, they
Even
could also have the kind of life that they probably did not have growing up.
and even for cousins, I mean, the children of their brothers and sisters, I mean,
Yeah,
they would be working
yeah,
for everybody.
yeah, definitely. It's like, you know, one of my only regrets is that when I was younger, I did not truly appreciate the amount of effort my father and even my mother they put into trying to make sure. They used to always tell me that we've tried our best to give you a comfortable life. Do not waste it,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
I didn't understand. I'm like, I'm not wasting it. I get 70, 75% everywhere. Like,
mhm,
I'm a sociable person. I don't have any bad habits. I'm not, So I used to think that that was enough when I was younger and that they were being unreasonable for demanding more.
mhm, mhm,
But I now realize that it was perfectly reasonable for them to ask me for the things that they asked me for.
mhm,
And again, because by virtue of the fact that, you know, things in the last couple of years have gone our way and the amount of effort and time that we've put into it is being rewarded. And again, I'm very grateful to the universe
mhm,
for that every day.
mhm, mhm,
It feels that everything worked out. But I
mhm,
often think about a lot of things that I used to do when I was younger. Like I was very rebellious. I just could not, like I told you, I had to do everything my way. I had to
mhm,
experience everything.
mhm,
So yes, there is a part of me that often wonders if I did the most out of the privileged situation that I had, if I made the most out of it.
mhm.
Um, but again, I also again I find it best not to think about the past too much
Yeah.
and just cherish and appreciate what we have in the present because otherwise, like I mentioned, you
Mhm,
never truly appreciate and enjoy the things you have. So now I
mhm,
just try to give back and do as much for my parents and my grandparents and my family. And not just my parents and my family, but like everybody who supported me growing up, right? Because
mhm.
this entire journey from school to working, it's not just, an
Individual. It's not
exam or
individual.
getting a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey that shapes you into a different version of yourself. And
Mhm,
you need to have the right kind of people with you to shape that journey and to get you to the point where you're actually the version of yourself that maybe 15 or 20-year-old you could look upon and be like, yeah, you know what, I'm happy with where I wanted to be.
mhm, mhm.
So I just try to, be cognizant of that and be appreciative of my parents, my family, and the friends that I grew up with, the people that really, I embarked upon this journey with. And
Friends, friends,
yeah,
friends, friends. Friends are important, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like we cannot do it alone. We need to have friends.
I mean, life would not be half of it what it is.
No doubt.
Without. So, IIMs, they allow you to have friends?
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, it's it's not a question of allow. It's a question of whether you yourself allow yourself to have friends.
Oh.
Right.
Mhm,
Like
mhm,
some people, they're hyper competitive. They're like, no, I just want to like go ahead and want to do everything. And like, sure, if it works for them, great, right?
mhm,
Like I said, everybody has their own journey and their own
mhm,
idea of what they want their
mhm,
life to be, and it's perfectly
mhm,
normal if somebody wants that for themselves.
mhm.
But what I've observed is that those people are very few.
Okay.
At an IIM, what happens is like, so up until you get into an IIM, you think that you're a very special person. You're like you just like you did it, and nobody else did it, but you did it. So you just have this thing. But then when you get there, and in 2 days, 3 days, you realize that
Usually
everybody
was,
is just like me. Everybody's the same here, right?
yeah.
So the first thing you need to do is let go of that mindset and just quell your own. Because there is no point to having an ego in an environment like that. It's meritocratic, sure, and it's competitive, but people will go further if they are together.
Yes.
Right? You cannot make enemies. You cannot, look down on people. You cannot, because everybody is there for a reason. They have a very unique skill set. And fortunately, I fell in with a group from the very first day that was critical to ensuring that some of the best memories of my life are from those 2 years of B school, right? We were a group of people. Some of them were like data wizards. Some of them were PhDs, right? Some of them were artists. And everybody had their own unique perspective that really augmented the group, not just when it came to projects and class and everything, but
as people,
in general life stuff, right? Because it's like I mentioned a while ago that everybody is going through the exact same thing, right? So having all these brilliant people who have their own strengths coming together to help each other out, you will definitely go a lot further than you could if you just decided to go it alone and do everything.
Wow.
That's how I've always felt about it. And I think that's just how I'll always continue to feel about it.
So today is Saturday, right? So you kind of had a day off from the work. All right. Thanks for giving valuable minutes and hours of your Saturday to us.
I hope it was valuable. I really do.
I mean, every single time I talk to somebody with whom I must have shared a classroom for a few months or weeks, there's a feeling of the two things pass through my mind. One, that okay, I must have done something all right that this person still wants to speak to me. And secondly, and second thing, which is intimidating basically, because now the person has come from a top institute. He has worked with the top companies. He's working as a top at some of the top companies, and they probably know a lot more about how things function than you do. And again, I mean, I can just be thankful for that. Because
no, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, but honestly, like all these years, so out of all the teachers I've had, right? Like I said, see, I was a very rebellious kid, and I wanted to do things my way. And it was very rare for me to come across an instructor who was able to teach things in a manner that really stuck with me, that really made me want to attend their classes. And, and with you, I remember even in the first classes, right, you always used to recommend us a certain set of books. Liar's Poker, Michael Lewis, Andrea Gassi's Open. Yeah.
Oh.
I read all those, right? And I used to read all those books and I used to like them. And that's what struck me, that like learning from you was going to be a great experience, because with you, even the most difficult topics like syllogisms and all, right? Like I used to like really rack my brain over those. But I think because of the fact that you used to recommend us books and I like really took that advice seriously and I used to read those and like it, for me, it was like you were an authority figure who was absolutely right about everything, who knew exactly what needs to be done. So for that reason, I always used to listen to you very intently, attend all your classes regularly. Like I'll be very honest and say this out loud. A lot of times I would tell my parents I'm going for the English class and just straight up not show. Right?
Okay.
Like my friend and I, we would just probably go eat momos or something. But with your classes, we always made sure that we attended those classes. So for that particular reason alone, like I've always thought of you very fondly and I've always held a lot of respect for you and the way you taught those things, because I believe it was only because of that I was able to score as highly as I was able to in English. And, so that way, yeah, that's just how I feel.
And coming from this side, I was I believe कि यार इस बंदे को मेरी जरूरत है नहीं actually because he's okay. The kind of sometimes you had kids who were really struggling with the language. So
Yeah.
so here I saw you walking and I said कि इसको जरूरत है नहीं, ठीक है बैठा है बैठने दो. Doesn't need me that more.
Yeah, you cut us a lot of slack. Like, even when me and my friend we used to talk in classes and everything, like you was just like you would let it slide. You would not really point it out the way you would for other people sometimes. So I guess I now know why that happened. But thank you for that.
Oh shit. Thanks for speaking your heart
For sure,
out.
sir.
And I hope you keep coming back to us with more experiences.
For sure.
I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation. So please like करें, share करें, subscribe करें या फिर subscribe करें, फिर like करें, फिर share करें. Whatever suits you, but please do it. See you next week. Bye bye.